Hi, Sandy here. I'm going to do a flip through of my latest Victorian book. I've done like over 25 glue books, and Victorian is my favorite subject. I've done 3 of these. The only books I've ever done are these old vintage scrapbooks, and then this kind that I bind myself. So I've got Victorian 1. No, these I call Victorian Treasure, and then the books I just call it Victorian 1, Victorian 2. So there's like Victorian Treasure 1, Victorian Treasure 2, and so that one, and then this one, and these pages are full. And there's probably about 30 pages covered on both sides in each of these larger books. And then these books, I do 50 pages each. There's 2, 4, 6, 7, so that's 100, 200, 350 pages right here. Just look at this. I just love that. Just look at that. That's a lot of pages I have done, covered on both sides. So, this is my favorite. I did a Holly Hobby book because I used to collect 40 years ago. Every year for 7 or 8 years, I would buy a Holly Hobby calendar, and I just loved them before I ever dreamed of doing glue books. And I just saved them because I liked them. So, so I decorated Victorian with the Holly Hobby. And then, let's see. Oh, yeah, there it is. I did Anne of Green Gables. You know, I remember growing up seeing cartoons of Anne of Green Gables and the book. I never read the book. I never showed much interest for Anne of Green Gables. And then I read the books. There's like 8 of them, and I read all the books. And I loved them. And then I found an old VHS movie of a series they made in the 80s. And I watched that with my daughter, and we just love Anne of Green Gables. So I actually ordered a book, a children's book with illustrations, and cut it all apart. And then I downloaded a bunch of images from Pinterest of Anne of Green Gables, including this. And I had photos printed of them because they're only 9 cents a piece at Walmart. So, of course, she was Victorian times, so this was a fun book to make. So here's one of the pages from the children's book. That's from the children's book, so that was fun. And then I had several Victorian decorating magazines that I had collected from the 90s, back when I used to decorate in Victorian style, 1990s, and I had so much stuff. I would cut out all of these pictures of pretty rooms, and I had so much that I wanted to use up a lot of it, and I just made this Victorian decorating magazine of pretty rooms. They're from the 90s magazines, not originally from the Victorian times, but it's just such a pretty book. And then I did Victorian 1. Now these covers, a lot of the covers are from some old vintage calendars that I have found at a garage sale a few years back, before I ever was making glue books. And I finally found a use for them, but they were so pretty. I just loved the images, and I just had to have them. I got like 10 for $1. It was a steal. So I got such pretty colors. So this is Victorian 1. I put all of my Victorian stuff in there. And all of these books, I've done flip-throughs on every one of them. You can look through my videos and find them, hopefully. This is Victorian 2, Victorian 3, And here's Victorian 4. This is the one I just finished and just bound. I bind these myself, and my friend Michelle, hello Michelle, she gave me a big stack of scrapbook paper and some magazines and some nice supplies recently. And this was in there. This was 12 by 12, and I cut it down to fit the page, and it's just so pretty. And then also there was a few sheets of scrapbook paper with cups on it, different kinds of cups, and I can't make a scrapbook page with that. But this, I just added some Tim Holtz little people on there, and then I got a big sheet of these stickers and banners from my previous order of Scrapbooking for Less, and this just looks perfect there, I think. And then I hope you can see both pages here. And I had made some Franken paper. Just using up basically the same colors all on one page, gluing them down and covering it, and then adding things. I have several sheets that are just waiting to be made. I don't make them and then cover them all in one step. Oh. Okay. And then this, Michelle gave me this too. This is so sweet. This is just such a pretty picture of these girls. So I'm going to not talk quite as much. Oh, and she gave me this postcard. Well, it was like 6 by 6, and I cut it down to postcard size because it was too big. And I added washi tape. I almost never use washi tape. This is a more modern house, but I needed stuff to fill in the spaces. Some more of my Franken paper, and I didn't plan this, but this apron is almost the same print as this piece of scrapbook paper. And then I like to use pages of rooms. This is not really Victorian, but it's vintage, it's pretty, and I added another one of those banners and just a few things. I made this cluster beforehand. I need to make some more clusters because sometimes I just don't know I need to fill in some space, and like right here I made a cluster, and just if I can make some clusters to fill in some space. I had a catalog of dolls that I found at a thrift store. This was, believe this was from Michelle too, this greeting card. It's a greeting card. And I add modern things, modern photos from magazines that are timeless, that will fit in, you know, so I don't have to use up all my Victorian stuff. This is a tag. I like to make tags. I made that. This is out of Good Old Days magazine, I believe. This is, sometimes I print stuff off Pinterest. There's some more dolls out of that magazine. And my pretty rooms I like to use. Sometimes I have all these strips of paper that come off the top of paper pads. And so I glue those on there. I don't like to waste anything. And here's another pretty room. I mostly just like this window. That is so from the right time Victorian window. And then I have some postcard size things I like to make sometimes, and this was vintage enough that it could fill in some space on here. This was from a cutout of a scrapbook sheet. I found a book called The Victorian Lady with a lot of these nice drawings in it. This is a piece of scrapbook paper that I used, and it's got these ladies on it, so I didn't add a lot to this page. I added a bird's nest. See, it's modern stuff mixed with old. This was from Good Old Days magazine, and I just added this strip of vintage paper here. I used the background, some computer paper that my daughter and I had colored with watercolors. And I just don't think this needs anything. It looks good just the way it is. It's got plenty of character. The point to me is to just enjoy flipping through my book, you know. And I've been recently looking through them. I go to bed and take a couple of my books with me and look through them, and it's so relaxing. So I've got this. This is out of a catalog that you could order. This might have been out of Reminisce magazine, I believe. And I have an old, the old Victorian magazines from the 1990s had a lot of these ads, and they got all these drawings of vintage things, and they just look so vintage, and I like to use those. There's another one of those ads. This was a full-page landscape picture with the bench and the flowers, and I just added some things. The watering can was already in the picture. I added the butterfly, and this is Tallulah Bankhead out of an article in a Reminisce magazine, I believe. I've got, this might be off a greeting card, I believe. I just love bicycles. I need to ride mine. I rode my bike last week, one day. I need to get on it more often. This is out of Reminisce magazine. It's just a pretty picture. It might be more from the 1920s, but it'll do. It's nice. This is from the Victorian calendars that I mentioned. Yeah, and they're like big collage pages, and they usually have a border of all these things collaged together. And so I save all these strips. And I like to use them on the edges of my pages sometimes. This is out of Reminisce magazine, I think, or Good Old Days. This is out of another doll catalog that I found. I found 2 doll catalogs, and their dresses seem to be the right era. And this is such a pretty room with that dresser and little girl. Here's an older couple sitting on their Victorian porch. I just added things. A bird. This too was from the edge of a Victorian magazine calendar. This again, a full-page magazine page, and I just added a few things. This is a piece of scrapbook paper, very vintage looking, and I covered most of it up. And I just happened to have this peacock stained glass, and then the peacocks in these pictures, and this is a doll, and I think it turned out pretty well. This is most of a page of a magazine, a beautiful staircase. I just love this. That is just, I love it. This is why I love Victorian stuff. There's more dolls, and I added some roses and some vintage paper on the edge. This was a full page. This is out of a very old magazine from like the 60s. Full page spread of a counter full of baked goods with a very vintage window in the back, and I just dressed it up a little bit. Here's another one of those ads. There's some more of those dolls. Victorian house. I cut these out of Reminisce, I believe. Another one of those ads. This is a calendar page, and like I was saying, see, they collage around the edges, and I just cut it down to size and ended up with a little bit still on there, but I've got some nice edges to use for something else, and it was just fine the way it was, but I need to add my own personal touch, so I added this little cluster and this, and it doesn't need anything else. And then I still have a few Holly Hobby pictures left. This one, in fact, was in several years of the calendars. I have like 6 of these, and I've already used 2 or 3 of them. But I'll keep using them because this page is totally different than the page that I made previously with the same picture, so that's okay. Here's another pretty staircase. These were out of Reminisce magazine, and I just love this dresser right here. I just love that. It looks a lot like my bedroom set, actually. It's so pretty. And roses. And that other page with the window and the baked goods, this was in the same magazine, and it just happened to be on one of them very old stoves. And I cut these out of a catalog where you could order these, LTD catalog. There was several different things, and I really used these. And then this was out of Reminisce, I believe, and I don't remember where that was, probably Reminisce. Just added a few little touches to it. And I think this is the same house. There were several, this one, yeah, there were several pictures. They did like an article on this house, and I think some of that might have been inside the house, maybe this. Anyway, there were several pictures inside and out of that house. So I added this doll and gazing ball, and there's another edge of the calendar. I use a lot of landscape pictures. I have a lot of these banners, and I need to use them more often. I need to get them used up. And I added a cat, and this old fence was pretty cool. And there's a wicker, well, not willow chair, and I added a wicker settee. And then I started with this pretty kitchen. Obviously, it's not truly old. It's got a dishwasher, but it's and some fancy ovens there. But it's got a lot of beautiful Victorian elements. And I added a stove and this recipe box. And again, these things were I cut out of a catalog. And just filled up some space. And then I started with these girls, and got to fill up the space. They're small, and I decided to use this car with this older couple in it, Ford. And then I had these too. I'm going to put that on there too. There's a cat. I think this is like a rug. It says wildflowers. And a rose bush. This is from a very old magazine, and another fancy gate. And this is a overhang of a house, very fancy, and a stained glass. I've had this for years and years. With my scrapbooking, I have a section for house, where I put houses and decorative things, furniture, building supplies that, when I remodel a room, I can decorate the page with that. And they've been in there for years and years, and I thought I need to get that stuff out of there and put them in my Victorian magazines. So that works. Okay. Is this? Yeah. Okay, I'm missing a page. I started with a full page of this pretty tablescape of flowers. Added some books and a bike. I think this is from that same bike I had before, like another part of the card. And I just added this stuff across the top and the dolls. And this is Tallulah Bankhead again. They had an article throughout her life. I didn't read the article. I just liked the pictures. They had a lot of character. So I fussy cut them. There was a whole page in the magazine of these very vintage pictures. And I added an ad for the fireplace, and this doorknob, the dishes. This is another piece of my Franken paper. There were other sheets in there too, but I didn't talk about them. This is also from that big sheet of paper of stickers that had the banners on it. And the butterfly. And I added a big flower and a bird and bird nest and a Victorian house. This is from my friend Michelle. Got a little glue on there. Okay. Then I started with this pretty room and just filled in the space with stuff. Another pretty staircase. This, I started out with this paper. I used the splattered paper for this on the watercolored paper that my daughter and I made, and usually one side is a much bolder. It doesn't show through a lot on the other side, and I covered it all up. You can see a few speckles right there, but it was so much orange in there. I thought, I'm going to make an orange page, and I had this on my table. Oh, I'm going to grab that, and I found a yellow house and a teddy bear with some orange on it, and just filled it with orange stuff. And then this was my again, I used the strips from the top of the paper in the paper pads and filled in the top half of this page. I've had it waiting to use to make a page with. Yeah, I just like to use stuff up. And here's an ad, a phone, a tray of tea, just various things. Sometimes I make these, I will fussy cut something larger and use a piece of vintage scrapbook paper as the background, and then I will start a page with that, just to fill in space, and it fills up space. This might have been from something from Vintage Creative Elements, WW707 Gypsies. I don't even know where I got this, but this was, there was something, stickers or something in this packaging, and I like this packaging so much, I'm going to keep that. And then this was from that Victorian ladies book that I found, and I used this scrapbook paper as the background, and it's got this little lace showing and the swirly and the roses, and I thought it just doesn't need anything else. But I did have this little picture of these girls having tea, so I added that, and I don't think it needs anything else. Each and every page does not have to be a crowded collage, although I do love making them. And then this, I had this cottage here, and I added that, and then I love this scrapbook paper with the birds on it, and then I used this, and then I looked through my tags and I found this. This has, this is very thick, and I prefer not to use that on my glue book pages. I use those in my scrapbook pages, which are protected by the page protectors, but that's okay. I don't like to use a lot of them. And then I use this paper, and it's textured. Maybe you can see the texture there, but it's very pretty, and I use that for the back. So there's the flip through done. And this, for the very first time, almost everybody does their glue books with pre-existing books, and I have never done that. So I got this at a thrift shop a while back, and I did remove a few pages, and I've started filling it in, and I'll do a flip through another time. But every page, every page is like this. There's a pretty picture of a Victorian garden right here, and then it's a calendar, 1 week here. Every week there was like 52 pages, but I took out a lot of the pages, so there's like 35 left. But I will be filling that in. So I've got it started, and it's fun. It's just small. So I'm just filling in this small area instead of sometimes I do them 16 by 11 pages in big scrapbooks. And then it's got writing across here, and I usually just add a pretty piece of scrapbook paper and a few things. And I'm having problems with my pages sticking together. So then I added some bugs on here, and this. I'm trying to keep it kind of vintage looking. This girl is not vintage, but she just looks so cute. So she's fine. And and I'm adding bugs and bunnies. I haven't actually added them yet, but I'm coming up with things that are gardenish. If I find a deer, you know, there's a wide variety of things you can add to a garden. Here's another page. And I found Barbie. Let me see. Here we go. I had a Barbie calendar. I do have a Barbie catalog. And they've got, this is her in an iris, lilac. What is that? Iris? I think it's an iris. I made this with a lot of purple on it. Added a bug to the garden. And then there was one of a rose. There she is. I skipped a few pages, but I'll be filling in every page. So there's a rose. And I just filled it in, added some bird's eggs. It's very pretty. Since she's a rose, I found this garden full of roses. And I have to tell you, I made a mistake. I snipped the strings and took out one page from each signature. But I'm not sure if that's because it's coming loose now. And I might need to take it apart and sew it back together, each signature, because now it's starting to come apart. Maybe I should have been removing entire signatures. But you live and learn, so we'll get it figured out. So that's what I've been up to, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.